Welcome to the video. In this video I want to talk about these things here. These are these little FrSky compatible receivers. Now there's quite a few different types here. There's ones with single antennas, there's also ones with dual antennas as well, and there's also ones with PWM pins for those times where you want to put it into a smaller plane. Now these things are actually starting to appear, or similar ones, in some of the smaller bind and fly models. Now this is my little XC90. I've actually 3D printed some prop guards and things for it, but right here you can actually see that is one of these FrSky compatible receivers. Now they're much cheaper than real FrSky receivers, but you do sacrifice a couple of things, and I've been asked about them by a number of subscribers, so I want to kind of share what our experiences are with them. First of all, let's talk about some of the good stuff. They are really inexpensive. Now I've used a lot of compatible receivers for things like spectrum technology, so things like the orange receivers and the lemon, and had a pretty good experience with those. These, however, I don't think are quite as good as that yet. We have this one here. This is an iRange X RX800. I'll put links in the description to as many of these that are still available from Banggood's site, so you can go and have a look. It provides you with an S-bus out. It also then provides you with a receive pin. So these all bind with D8 protocol on the radio. So these are not X-series receivers. They behave as though they're older D-series receivers. So it's kind of traditional telemetry. You also have some of the other connections as well. The manual that came with them is very rudimentary, and all of them are actually based on a project to create FrSky compatible receivers that people have been working on. Now they are really small and lightweight as well. They're kind of sub XSR size, really small. So these are centimeter squares, so you can see how diddy these guys are. They're all similar sizes. So I have two of these style. These are RX800, and on the back you can actually, hopefully you can pick that up on the camera, it says Airwolf RX F800. You can read that on the back. There's another version of it here, which is a black version from another vendor, but interestingly, if you look at the back, the board looks absolutely identical. So I think this is actually the same receiver, because the pinouts are the same, but it's in a slightly different package. So that's something that you just have to be aware of. Even if it looks slightly different, it's probably based on the same thing. Now the way it works with this is there's a little bind button under these heat shrinks. I've had to cut some of the heat shrink around some of these bind buttons. This one's one of those that's very stiff, it's hard to press. This one actually does depress, but because the heat shrink on the corners has actually pressed down the bind button, so be careful with that. The connection that comes with it doesn't have any connectors on it, so this is one that I've been just playing with the S-bus connection. It'll give you 8 channels of S-bus, and I think the 9th channel appears as the RSSI value. So if you're using something like CleanFlight or Betaflight, you can pick up channel 9 as your RSSI signal. On addition to those, you have this one here. This is the RX802. It's another mini receiver. This one has 2 antennas. It doesn't seem to particularly help with some of the dropouts that I've been getting, but this only has 3 wires on it. So it doesn't have things like for the telemetry, it doesn't have some of the analog inputs as well. It's just a 3-wire connection for S-bus. And that is via a little port. Again, we have a bind button here. This one actually works well. The other thing I've had in a couple of these is these little connectors here that put the antennas onto the top of the board haven't been pressed home. So if you get one of these, a couple of things: make sure that your bind button's free, and make sure that your antenna is snapped on. It goes on with a very positive click. Last one then here is this thing. This is something called an F801. So it's a slightly more grown-up version than the other ones. This is unusual, and it actually uses a bind key to actually bind to the radio, and then it has a number of outputs. It also includes a Ppm output as well if you want to do that. Again, single antenna. So in practice, these guys are useful, I think, if you want to pop them on something like a mini quad or a mini wing that's not going to get anything more than about 50 to 60 meters away. In practice, I found that the range can be a little bit limited. So compared with something like an XSR, where you can get many hundreds of meters range out of it without any problem, I found that I was getting occasional little dropouts outside of anything from kind of 50, 60, even with the double antenna one. So the other thing we've tested as well is whether or not these things bind to both EU and non-EU versions of the Taranis, and I'm pleased to say that they appear to do both. I've tried it here with non-EU versions of the firmware and it's been great, and one of the friends of the channel, Andy RC, check out his YouTube channel, also tried it with his Taranis and it bound beautifully with the EU firmware over there on D8 protocol. Select D8 protocol in the bind menu and bind them up just as you would any other FrSky receiver. So I hope that's been helpful, just to give you an idea that these things exist. They are useful, I think, for those kind of really small quads where price is an absolute premium and you're going to be flying them in pretty close proximity. Then these are definitely worth looking at. If you are looking at putting a receiver on a bigger model that has more capability to hurt somebody or get away from you, or has more expensive equipment on it that you don't want damaged, then I wouldn't risk these at the moment. I don't think they're quite good enough to trust in the same way that you would a traditional FrSky receiver. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.